All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Bored as Hell podcast. I'm Adam McDonald with Big Shiny Robot.
And I am Andy Wilson, a.k.a. Citizen Bot, also a Big Shiny Robot.
And we're here this week to talk to you about three kind of big releases. Well, two big releases and then one kind of small release. We got Straight Outta Compton, the biopic about NWA. The Man from U.N.C.L.E, the spy thriller by Guy Ritchie. And our first movie is the limited release, also video on demand, Fort Tilden. Now, Andy, you saw this one, and I didn't because, like you said, it was incredibly small release.
This is a really small release, so unless you happen to live in Dallas or Houston or Chicago, New York, L.A., Atlanta, a couple of other places, this probably isn't in your theaters, but it is showing up on video on demand. Where I saw this movie was at South by Southwest, and this was my favorite comedy of South by Southwest. This is a story of two girls named Allie and Harper, and it kind of ends up being a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead sort of comedy of errors and absurdist comedies about these two clueless girls living in Brooklyn, living the bohemian millennial lifestyle, and deciding they want to go take a day at the beach. They're both kind of at a crossroads in their life right now. One of them is applying to be in the Peace Corps, but she's not really sure that that's what she wants to do, but that's probably what she's supposed to do with her life. And the other one is just sponging off money from her dad and not really doing anything. And they have a series of wacky misadventures trying to get to the beach because, hey, there's cute boys that are going to be there and they want to...
Ooh.
Yeah. They want to hook up with these boys because it's the end of the summer and we got to do one last thing. Really funny, a lot of really smart commentary about, like I said, kind of the millennial generation and Brooklyn and hipsterism, and also some really cute things. Like there's a moral conundrum where they're trying to decide whether to save a barrel full of cats. Yeah, so it's there's a lot here. It is rated R. It earns its R rating between nudity and talk of a sexual nature, but it ends up being just kind of a really sweet and somewhat thinky piece about this lost generation and what the heck that we're doing. So I loved it. New filmmakers, Sarah Violet Bliss and Charles Rogers, who both wrote and directed this. Be on the lookout for more of their work in the future. I gave this 7 out of 10.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because I'm glad to hear that there was, like you mentioned, the smart script and actually was well done. Because the way you were describing it at first, I was just kind of thinking, oh, this is just another very typical, teen/college sex comedy, or but it's good to see that it actually had more to it than just it had more layers than just that shiny facade.
Yeah, it's really smart, and there's a running gag where they keep seeing Reggie Watts everywhere, and they're like, Reggie Watts, that guy's everywhere. And they're like, Reggie Watts, that guy is everywhere. What's going on? I mean, these are kind of really inside jokes, and I think you have to be clued in to some of this, but it's one of those movies. I would compare this to SLC Punk in a lot of ways, in kind of its musing about what's going on with this generation, and I hope more people get to see it and think about that stuff and laugh.
Cool. Well, like we said, it's video on demand, which a lot more movies are doing nowadays. We actually can watch them even the day of. They come out in theaters for these limited releases. And then if you're lucky enough to live in a big city like LA, New York, you can definitely check it out there. One movie that you can check out no matter where you are, though, is The Man from U.N.C.L.E. This is the new Guy Ritchie spy film. Guy Ritchie, of course, we know from Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, and the Sherlock Holmes movies. It's based off the 1960s kind of TV spy drama. It stars Henry Cavill as Napoleon Solo. He's a CIA agent in East Berlin trying to rescue or bring a young woman named Gabby Teller, played by Alicia Vikander, over to the West Berlin to the U.S. side, and we're not really sure why at first. However, they're facing Armie Hammer, Ilya Kurikin, who's played by Armie Hammer, who is the KGB agent trying to stop them and thwart them and keep her on the East Berlin side. So the next morning, when they actually get to West Berlin, they're both pretty surprised to meet together and find out that their handlers have teamed together to pull a mission with young Gabby Teller. Her father was kidnapped, and he is doing research that would make it very, very easily to enrich uranium, and that would also, at that point, whoever has that information could get their hands on or create a nuclear bomb very, very easily and sell it to the highest bidder. And in the middle of the Cold War, even though the U.S. and Russia are fighting each other, that's the worst thing that could have happen. So all three of them are sent to Italy, where they meet up with Victoria Vinciguerri, played by Elizabeth Debicki. She is the one who they believe has captured Gabby's father and is holding him hostage to make him make this bomb for them. And basically, Henry Cavill's character and Armie Hammer, they're complete opposites. Napoleon Solo is very much the suave, debonair, kind of mischief maker of a spy, and Ilya Kurikin is by the numbers, by the books, very, very serious. So it almost kind of becomes like a buddy cop movie as these two people kind of both work together and fight together to basically save the world. So it's a lot of fun. I'd say this is one of the funnier movies of the summer. It's also a lot of great action. The chemistry between Henry Cavill and Armie Hammer is absolutely fantastic. I mean, these guys together, they play off each other very, very well. Even just their little physical clues, they have great back and forth. But yeah, overall, really fun movie. I liked it a lot. Honestly, I'd say it's probably even better than Mission Impossible.
Yeah, this was a absolutely great spy thriller. I loved it. And what really sells it is Guy Ritchie's attention to detail and his ability to nail these period pieces. When we were talking about this before, I mentioned how in Sherlock Holmes, Guy Ritchie makes me feel like I can taste the fog and coal soot as it's in there. And he nails that same vibe of early 60s Europe and the swinging spy, gentleman spy scene. And on top of that, you have the great chemistry between your three leads. And it is this odd couple. Napoleon Solo is a con man, basically.
Yeah, that's how he got hired by the CIA. After World War II, he started going through Europe and stealing art and selling it, and finally got captured.
Yeah, so it's great, and it's so like people who watch a show like White Collar or something like that, who like to see the kind of, oh well, he's a criminal, but now he's a good guy. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of him being very dashing and funny, and Armie Hammer is just perfect as the brooding straight man genius who is way more competent than this other Joker. And so the two of them work so well together, and then they're playing off for this third person, for Gabby, and
he's just so exasperated with the two of them.
Yeah, and there's a great character turn for her in the final act, which I won't give away, but it sheds a fun light on the interplay between the three of them. And it's just great. It's a really smart script. It's a really funny script, and the chemistry between the three of them just sells this.
Yeah, I would say we'd be remiss not to mention Hugh Grant, who shows up as Waverly, who is the head of British intelligence, and they get wound in as well, because even though it's mainly the U.S. versus Russia, they don't want the bomb to get there. And I didn't recognize him at first because he wasn't playing the stereotypical Hugh Grant, type of character. He's funny. Funny. He has some of the best standout lines. They give, for the brief amount of time he's on screen, they give him so much to do, and it's always really exciting to see an actor play a different type of role, but also just thoroughly enjoy what they're doing and have a great time with it. And the same will be said with Elizabeth Debicki, who plays kind of the bad guy, Victoria.
Yep.
She's the head of this corporation, and but she's still very much a femme fatale. I mean, every scene that she's in, she owns it. She manages to be, like we mentioned, Guy Ritchie as a period piece completely captures it, and like you feel like you're watching this like '60s supermodel the whole time she's on screen, but she owns that everything she's in.
Yeah, she's great as the villain, and it mirrors perfectly again a lot of those '60s spy movies, the In Like Flint and Goldfinger and some of the other Sean Connery era Bonds. There's just that perfect how do I say it? They just nailed that period so perfectly, and it just stands out for me as one of the best elements of the film. What I would have liked to have seen more is Ritchie is such a great visual filmmaker, and they really don't let him off the leash very much. There's one scene near the very end, a big climactic battle scene where he gets to do his quick cuts and all of that, and it becomes a very Guy Ritchie movie for a few minutes. Some people are going to get annoyed by that. I really loved it, and I wish they would have let him do more of that. But it's going to be really divisive to people, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily like that style, or else Rock and Rolla would be his highest grossing film and not Sherlock Holmes.
And see, I disagree a little bit because someone asked me, what is it like? And I was like, it's like in the same way that Sherlock Holmes turned out how it would expect Guy Ritchie to do a Sherlock Holmes movie. This feels like 100% a Guy Ritchie spy film. I mean, the cinematography is amazing.
Yep.
You mentioned the quick cuts. There's some kind of cool little montages when they're, or multi-camera views on the same screen when they're breaking into places. I don't know what he did, but it's almost like he put a filter on the lens that made it looked like almost a '60s movie, like from the '60s, not just the feel and look, but the actual the filming of it. So I was very, very pleased. I feel like we got again, to me, this is a Guy Ritchie movie through and through. It's not swept away. We forget about that one. Oh, Madonna, you horrible person. But it was everything I wanted from a Guy Ritchie spy movie. It surprised the hell out of me because I went in thinking, whatever. I'll give it a chance. I like Guy Ritchie. Parts of it are almost Tarantino-esque, I would say. In fact, some of the opening scenes kind of bleed over into that territory where you couldn't really tell who was directing it. But in the end, it's very much his film. I loved it. I'm at a 9 out of 10 on this one.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less than that. I give it a 7.5 out of 10. I really liked it. I would have liked it to have been a little more Guy Ritchie, and I guess we just disagree about how Guy Ritchie-esque it was.
Yeah,
but it's still
great. So
yeah, great time, and people. I saw someone else say that this was the best spy movie of the summer. We've had some other really great spy movies. This might be the best one of them. But Spy, Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, both very good. This might be a little better.
Yeah, I was actually talking with a friend of mine last night, and I'd forgotten about Spy, which is horrible because I love that movie. It's been a great year for spy movies. We mentioned that with Mission Impossible. This would, in my opinion, be slightly above Mission Impossible as far as how well it's executed. But that being said, the other movie is still great too. So if you love spy movies, there's at least 2 in the theaters you can still go see. Spy might still be in the dollar theater, so definitely check them out if you haven't seen them. They're a lot of fun. So cool. Well, going on to our next film, it's definitely interesting, if not quite as fun. Completely different genre is the biopic Straight Outta Compton, which chronicles the rise, fall, and future of the members of NWA, who were pretty much responsible for inventing rap in the 80s.
Yeah. So, those not familiar with NWA, this is a great way to get very educated by street knowledge to take the line from the beginning of the film and from the album
Yes.
of Straight Outta Compton. This film chronicles the beginnings of NWA, starting in about 1985, and goes all the way through into the mid 90s, and the rise of Dr. Dre and Death Row Records and what was going on there, and kind of stops at that point. So anyone looking for like a Biggie Tupac movie, none of that really gets addressed in here, and stops kind of right before that era in the whole gangster rap chronicle. But this movie stars as our big three. Playing Ice Cube is his son, O'Shea Jackson Jr. I spent the entire movie looking at this, like, how did they get a guy who looks exactly like Ice Cube?
Oh, it was
like,
eerie. It was
yeah,
100% eerie.
yeah, and who just nailed him. It's like, oh, it's his kid. Yeah, it was perfect. Rounding that out, playing Dr. Dre is Corey Hawkins, who I remember a little bit from Iron Man 3 as one of the AIM bad guys, and Eazy-E, played by Jason Mitchell, who just nails
it. It's perfect.
Oh my gosh, an amazing acting job by him. Rounded out, DJ Yella is played by Neil Brown Jr., and MC Ren, played by Aldous Hodge, who fans of the USA show Leverage with Timothy Hutton, you will remember him very well. NWA was kind of the seminal gangster rap group. Before then, you'd had some hip hop that was charting. You had stuff like DJ Easy Rock and MC Rob Bass that was making it onto the pop charts. But rap was kind of a kinder, gentler thing that was striving to break into the mainstream. And then NWA comes out of nowhere with this song Boys in the Hood, which those of you listening to this, that is our theme song.
Yeah, the Dynamite Hack cover of it. So
yeah, for a good reason. As a white boy growing up in Provo, Utah, there was really nothing scarier to my parents and the other adults around me than gangster rap like NWA. And so the idea of, this very soft-spoken version of Boys in the Hood is, I just think it's hilarious. And plus they say bored as hell in it. So there we go. So there we go. But that's where we were in the mid 80s, early 90s, where gangster rap was really dangerous. And NWA's touring around the country, and their song "F the Police" gets them in big trouble. There's
with the police, surprisingly.
Yeah, amazing how the police are upset by that. There's a great scene where they're in Detroit, and basically the Detroit police try to shut them down. It causes a riot. It's one of the best pieces in there. But there's a lot in this movie about police interaction and the whole idea of what it is growing up on the streets of Compton, and what that lifestyle is. And Ice Cube in a press conference is like, hey, we're street poets, we're truth tellers, we're just talking about what it is that's our experience, and putting that out there. So this movie feels as much like a biopic as it is an incredibly prescient piece of social commentary about our day, in the era of Ferguson and Michael Brown and Tamir Rice, and the hundreds of other police-involved shootings that have happened in the last several years. These guys look more like prophets than they do just rappers. So this is really interesting. That being said, it does gloss over some of the more nasty bits of NWA's history, and aspects of very misogynistic lyrics and allegations of spousal and partner abuse and other things like that. I'm not going to step in here and police the lyrics of NWA. I mean, there have been far better people than me and people from
and far worse.
yeah, people from the community who can do that. But I do want to talk about this as a film and as a piece of art. And to Ice Cube and Dr. Dre served as executive producers here on this film. So I don't think they were necessarily interested in having that introspective moment, thinking about whether or not their lyrics are sexist or promote violence towards women. That's okay. We can forgive it. That basically this movie falls prey to a lot of the same problems that most other biopics do, where it does seem almost a little bit formulaic in where they're going and what the tragic falls are here. That being said, it's a hell of a ride, and it just is amazing to see the acting going on here. It really makes you feel a lot for these characters, and even people who I thought I would not be sympathetic towards at all in the film, I ended up being very having a lot of heart towards them. I kind of hated Eazy-E going into this movie, and it's like, oh, that guy just scammed NWA out of their money, and he wasn't the real talent behind the group, and everyone knew that it was Dre and Ice Cube. And but no, this was this told another side of it, and told a story of basically a bunch of friends who kind of got in over their head. They just kind of thought they were having a band and having fun, and it blew up into something completely different than that. So,
yeah, it's like you said. There's a lot here to love. First and foremost, it's the performances are amazing. Like I was sitting there, and I even knew, it was O'Shea Jackson was Ice Cube's son, but still, every time I looked at the screen, I swore we talked about earlier, they'd done something to make Ice Cube look younger. They had some mental or some 3D trickery like they did with Michael Douglas for Ant-Man. But yeah, these actors fully embody their roles, and it's kind of funny you mentioned growing up here in Utah, like gangster rap was so taboo and kind of crazy. Was my growing up in Southern California at the time, only an hour and a half away from Los Angeles. We knew about it, but it was also kind of more of a white bread, very conservative type area I was. So, growing up when I heard like, oh, this song called F the Police, you can't listen to that, it's horrible, and it's these black guys being gangsters and blah, blah, blah. Of course, growing up and learning about this and learning about the history of that time period, it's more understood where that came from. It wasn't the fact that they hated the police because the police were, being racist. They were, arresting them for no reason, being brutal to them, beating them. And anytime you have a group of people who are so beat down, eventually, yeah, they will rise up. And they're not going to do it kindly and, with, oh, now, let's not do this. No, they're going to be angry. And that's what the NWA really, especially with Straight Outta Compton, really embodies. And this film perfectly portrays that. We were talking about Man from U.N.C.L.E. being such a wonderful period piece for the 60s. This is a great period piece for the late 80s.
Yeah. And
it seems kind of weird to say that because I was born in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I was about 10, 8 to 15 for the time period of this movie. But it's funny because there's so many things they were mentioning. Like they have a scene where folks in the family has everyone riled up about the thing. So you see people went out and bought the albums and they got a steamroller and they're crushing them. I remember seeing that in the news. I remember the Rodney King beating in the trial and the LA riots. And so it was kind of funny because this is one of the very first movies that a biopic set in my lifetime that I can go back and be like, I remember these moments. And it's perfectly done here.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It made me feel old.
I don't know if it made me feel old as much as it was just, it was just almost kind of unreal because, like I said, this is something that happened in my lifetime that I knew about. Yeah, going in, everyone always, like you mentioned, Eazy-E was kind of the one who wasn't the talented one. It was really interesting to see that they did show him in a kinder light. I think kind of one of the, the movie kind of ends on a sad note, but we all know Eazy died of AIDS, and it kind of caps off after that. But I believe it was O'Shea Jackson as Ice Cube saying, I think he was talking to Dre, or maybe even Eazy-E, I can't remember, and he mentions like, man, we left a lot of good records on the table because, the infighting and the problems with money that kind of split them apart and caused them to have kind of feuds with each other made us and them miss out on what could have been some of the best rap music, if not music, of the 90s. I mean, we did get a lot of great talent out of that, like Tupac and, Snoop Dogg came out of there. But what would have happened if they had stayed together and not had the problems they did?
Yeah, it really is amazing to think that. And the best thing about this movie is it sets these guys up as the titans that they were, and then this all plays out like Greek tragedy.
That's what I was just thinking, actually.
Each and every single one of these guys had their own like Greek tragic flaw, and it ends up killing them in the end. And it's so terrible. And it's nice to see that sort of introspection, even when this borders on being very hagiographic and really a little bit maybe too protective of some of them. Like they're not going to go too far, but at the same time, they are owning up to their problems. And in that, it reminds me a little bit of the Cameron Crowe Pearl Jam documentary that came out a couple of years ago, or the Foo Fighters documentary Wasting Light that came out a couple of years ago. It's like these guys didn't do a complete warts and all, but they did mention that there were some warts, and like we're willing to show some of that off.
Yeah, and they again, it's if I was to tell the story of my life, I'd be honest about some things, but I'm not going to show the deepest, darkest thing they've ever done, and I don't think anyone would do that. So they didn't shy away from the fact that Eazy-E was a crack dealer. I mean, in the very first opening scene of the movie, he's doing a crack deal that goes wrong. So they showed them being misogynistic. They showed them with wild parties, with treating women like objects. They showed them with guns. So they weren't afraid to be honest as far as part of the interpretation. But at the same time, so they were neither saints nor fully sinners. They were just, I guess they tried to show them as like everyday kids who grew up in this horrible situation and made something of themselves. Maybe not in a way that my mom and dad would be happy to see, but they actually did stand up and do something. In fact, one of the opening scenes, Dre's talking to his mom about how he's going to be a DJ, and she's like, no, you need to get a job. He's like, no, I'm trying to do something. I'm better than that. And she slaps him and says, don't ever say you're better than any job. And then he went out there and proved that he could be better than just, washing dishes at the McDonald's or something.
Yeah. But to be fair, Dre was kind of he wasn't the businessman, but he certainly turned himself into that and spun that into business after getting
Death Row and Aftermath and everything else.
After getting screwed out of what was going on with NWA, he went out and tried to do things on his own, and this was one thing that I really didn't want to forgive them for, but I kind of do. In the end wrap up where they show like what's happened with NWA in the last 15 years, they do a shout out to Beats by Dre and and how they were acquired by Apple for the most amount of money, and it just felt like the worst kind of product placement and pandering. And I'm just like, shut up about your headphones, Dr. Dre.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, they're really crappy headphones. I mean, anyone who tells you Beats headphones, trust me, I deal with these on a daily basis.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter that he was able to get DJs to sign on both in the hip hop and the EDM industry and make them as popular as they are, good for him.
Yeah.
Sell to Apple for your billions. Great. They're crappy headphones, and you know it. So.
I think it's more of a testimony to Dre's ability as a charismatic businessman and his influence on the music industry to this day, that he was able to do that. He himself as a brand, rather than the quality of the product. Because I completely agree with you.
Well, and it's no coincidence that his first album in 14 years, Compton, dropped the week before this movie came out. So. it's a great album. I mean, it's a fantastic album, but the marketing for this movie was actually incredible. If you're anywhere on social media, you've seen the Straight Outta wherever meme that you could make.
Yep.
So they handled this movie perfectly. I have a couple problems with it though. Don't want to skip over. Paul Giamatti plays their manager Jerry Heller, and they set him up to be the scumbag villain of the movie, for screwing them over. Kind of alludes to what he did could very well have been what broke up NWA in the first place. I'm sorry, I'm so tired of Paul Giamatti, especially playing this sneaky conniving manager role, which he's done like 3 times now.
Oh, yeah.
He was great in Sideways, but he's kind of become this character actor stuck in the same role in every single movie. I mean, even in Amazing Spider-Man as the Rhino, he was this annoying, sniveling little guy. It's really getting old, and every time I see him on screen, I can't think of him as, oh, this is Jerry Heller, this is this character. I see Paul Giamatti, and it just completely just tears me out of the experience. It's not that he's bad at what he does. It's just he's doing the same thing over and over again.
I kept getting confused as to whether this was his character from Love and Mercy or Straight Outta Compton, because they really seemed completely
or Rock of Ages.
Or Rock of Ages.
Yeah. So again, it's the same role over and over again. Do something different, dude. And then my other big complaint is the movie's way too long. I know there's a lot to go over here because so much happened, but at 2.5 hours, it had me checking my watch. It needs an editor badly. I mean, I understand there's this whole idea of the rock star / rapper lifestyle that has huge extravagant parties with half-naked men and women and drugs and alcohol, but there was a few too many of those scenes to where we got the point of what was happening, but we didn't need to see it every couple minutes. Oh, they're at another party or they're doing this. We understand the lifestyle that they were finally able to live without having to see it every for 20-30 minutes. If they would have cut a lot of that out and maybe shaped it down to a 2-hour movie, I would have been happier with it.
I could agree with that. I did not. I will agree that we didn't need to see the party scenes so much, and that there was some stuff that was redundant in the movie. The length didn't bother me as much as it did you. But that's okay.
And it could have been there was an annoying woman behind me who kept talking the whole movie, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, great movie, excellent biopic. I'd say probably one of the best I've ever seen in that sense. But because of Giamatti and the length, I am giving it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a fantastic movie, but there are a couple things that I could have just tightened it up and made it a bit better.
Yeah, I'm at exactly the same place, 8 out of 10. I think it falls into the same traps and tropes that a lot of other biopics do. I'm thinking of Walk the Line and Ray specifically. That's not a bad thing, but it does. There's no new ground tread here, but it plays like a greatest hits of NWA.
Oh yeah,
Dr. Dre. So that's fine. It works, and it's really engaging for that. But it's not near a perfect movie. But I love it a lot.
Yeah. That being said, I would not be surprised to see some of these actors, especially O'Shea Jackson, see their names pop up when award season comes around. I don't know if it was exactly good enough for an Oscar, but I think you might be seeing stuff like maybe Emmys or Golden Globes.
Yeah, I keep going back to Jason Mitchell and how he became Eazy-E.
And Jason Mitchell too. Yeah, his name just slipped my mind, but
I bet we'll continue to see O'Shea Jackson Jr. Do a lot of the same things his dad did. I think
the Friday after next.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going. Is they need to reboot Friday and have him and find someone to replace Chris Tucker,
or have him in 23 Jump Street.
Oh, jeez, have him in 23.
Don't mess with Korean Jesus.
Isn't it funny to think that the guy from NWA also did Road Trip?
Exactly. Or Are We There Yet?
or that's what I'm thinking of. Are We There Yet?
Yeah.
Road Trip. Different movie. Different terrible movie, but yeah. family friendly Ice Cube. But yeah.
Who would have thought? So, all right. Well, that's all we have for you this week. Next week we've got a couple movies coming out. We've got the horror movie sequel Sinister 2, about the ghost that lives in film / pictures. The stoner spy comedy, American Ultra. And then the I think it's the third movie in the series now, Hitman Agent 47, based on the best-selling video game. So kind of an interesting week. We'll see how all of that goes. But be sure to check us out here next Sunday or Monday, and we'll have those reviews for you. Take it out for us, Andy.
Nowadays, everybody want to talk like they got something to say, but nothing comes out when they move the lips. Just a bunch of gibberish. Like they forgot about Dre.
Hail Satan and have a lovely afternoon.
Bye, Felicia.